Welcome, foodie friends, to another episode of Cast Iron Conversations with your host, Chef Pat Lee. As always, we're here to feed your mind, body, and soul with nourishing recipes and fulfilling conversations. Joining me today on the podcast is an extraordinary chef who personally, in my eyes, needs no introduction, but we're going to give her one because her accomplishments and contributions to the culinary world definitely need to be spoken about. She's been featured in Essence, New York One, Chop. I'm pretty sure I'm leaving some of them out, but we'll get into that when we speak with her. She's an educator, a community advocate. She wears many hats, but today we're here to acknowledge her for the crown she wears as she represents the city of New York, my former hometown, and the culture and everything that she does. Family and friends, it gives me great pleasure to introduce the one and only Chef Lexis. Chef, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thank you. Good. How you doing? How's it going?
I'm excited. I'm happy. It's a great day. I hope I did you justice with an introduction.
Yeah, I think it touched the surface of what I do. Of many hats. Yeah.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I usually am cooking every single day, so this is in the morning. This is my time to chill out. So this is a perfect time for me to just have a good conversation about things I like.
Awesome. And I am glad, first of all, that you took some time out of your busy schedule to join me on the podcast today. I know that you have a lot going on with, not just cooking, but content. You're educating kids. You're doing a lot of great things for the community. So really, I just wanted to take this time to get to know you a little bit more. Met you virtually a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. But, for my audience who isn't really familiar with your work or what you do, would you mind just, giving a brief introduction and just telling us a little bit about your background?
Okay. I've always liked to do events because people always ask me, how did I get here? I always like to do events, and since I was younger, I love to go to parties. I love to do soirees. I guess a socialite, right? Mm-hmm. And I always knew that food came with entertainment, if that makes sense. One thing's go with the other. Yeah. And when I decided to change where I wanted to go to school at, I was an accounting major actually at Baruch here in New York. And I was like, well, I want to change something up. I want to be an event planner. And I was like, okay, I'll just go to school for event planning. But that wasn't a thing. In 2011? That was, you know how people do it so much now. People were doing it, but it was a real, how can I say, elite thing. You have to know people be in that industry. Yeah. So I was like, well, you know what? I'll go to school and see what happens. When I went to school, they actually told you have to take a culinary in order to do event planning. So culinary would be the major, and then event planning would be the minor. Or I could have took hospitality, and I didn't want to be at anybody's hotels. So I just knew that. So I was like, okay, well, I could cook. I think I could do back of the house, front of the house. I was just thinking if I had an event and a chef necessarily called out, I knew I could pick up, or help or do things. That was my thoughts. Yeah. I didn't think that going through the journey of going to culinary school that I would, actually like cooking a lot more. I do like the event planning part, but I just really liked cooking and baking in particular. And my chef kind of realized that I was really good at it, and she kind of pushed me. So then I did a couple of cake competitions, and then I decided after I left, I was at Kingsborough, after I left Baruch, and then I went to City Tech, and I was like, well, I need to do something in order to get some type of, I guess, your feet wet. It's hard in the industry. We used to do stages. I mean, if everybody doesn't know what a stage is when you go to a place and you work for free. And usually they kind of teach you the ropes of a place. I did a stage at this place called Adele, if I'm not mistaken. It was in a Union Square area, and you stay there for the day and you work a shift, and they see if you kind of meld with the people to see how it is, and you see if you get a job. But lately, as I got older, that wasn't a thing. So I was like, well, you know what? Let me figure out how can I be a part of the industry and kind of feel it out first. Mm-hmm. But when before, I'm skipping over a couple parts. I was married and I had my first kid. So at this point, I was and then I was pregnant with my second son. So I'm like, well, what am I going to do that somebody's going to hire me? I'm like, nobody's going to hire me with a kid, you know, a toddler. I don't want like a under one, and then I was pregnant, about to have another kid. No one's gonna give me a shot. So that's how I kind of got into catering, because I was like, well, you know what? Let me just start to cater so that I could get some money, and then by the time I'm, you know, done with the boys, like having the boys, and they get a little older, I could go back to like that full industry. But it kind of took a mind of its own, and I just kind of started doing it permanently. I started baking cookies right outside my house. I baked the cookies and I would bring them downstairs and I would sell them right in Harlem on 124th and Madison. And then I would sell cookies outside, and that's how I saved up some money to get a shop. And then I opened up my shop right around the corner. That was 2020. Nope, sorry, here we are, 2020, right? 2013. So that was when I was 23 years old. So 22, 23, I opened up my first bakery in Harlem called Lady Lexis Sweets. And that's kind of like how it started. And then it kind of snowballed to where I'm at today.
That's an amazing story, and it's just a prime example of how humble beginnings can get you so far. And it is definitely inspiring, because I know that a lot of times, especially growing up as African Americans and Afro Latinos, it is kind of hard for us to get in those spaces. Mm-hmm. So, would you say that, you know, being an Afro Latina, it was a little bit more challenging for you to kind of get in those spaces, or would you say it's kind of the same as anybody else with those same opportunities?
No, I think it is challenging. I think even being a woman is challenging in the industry. A lot of people don't talk about that. You know, I mean, yeah, I agree. Women cook at home, but in the industry, it's very much a male-dominated industry, and it's also a white male-dominated industry. It's not even like males across the board. It's a white male-dominated, and I mean, we can honestly see that through how they're represented in the magazines, the representation when you Google them. You know, like when you Google a chef, and when you Google food, it's certain things that come up. And even on TV, you know, what we see as who are the people that are the judges, and, you know, for the competitions, and who even gets the opportunity to be on some of these shows. So I would say that it was difficult for me at first to see it, because, like, especially when that first year when I started, a little fun fact is I met Marcus Sanderson the first year before I started my like career at the shop. I tweeted him. So funny. I tweeted him. That's when Twitter really worked. I tweeted him. I was like, hey, Marcus, I'm outside. I'm selling cookies. And I knew he had a restaurant in the area. So I was like, okay, you know, you should like stop by. And he stopped by. And I had the table outside. And then the next day he came back. He bought everything. And then the next day he came back and gave me some pointers. And then we were, you know, he was just like a silent mentor to me over that time, and then became like a regular person I could call now. And that part right there, from knowing him from the table, I got to be in other like, you know, food festivals. So I was in Harlem Meetup, which was dope because I got to see like other chefs and that type of stuff, and see who else was in the industry. And even there, you could see there was a lot more males than women, you know. But it was a diverse group because it was Harlem Meetup, and it represented black and minority culture through food. But then when I went to another one, I forgot which one it was. I just remember it was in Brooklyn. I was literally the only chef that was of color. Oh wow! And I was like, because they were like, oh, all the owners come take pictures, right? And you know, you see other people there. So some people that look like me, I'm like, okay, cool. Everybody want to take a picture. We're cool. And then, but when they said the owners, like when they say owners come to the front, there were no owners that were black. There were no owners that were, I think, and then maybe, I think one. And there was 100 chefs. And I was like, wow. Like literally 1 or 2 out of the 100 were the actual people that, you know, run it, or like are the executive chefs or whatever. Like that is non-existent. Well, it was then. Now we're here. We've always been here. We just don't get the limelight, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely do agree with you, because I've had similar experiences before where I've been to catering events and I was the only black person in the event, and I took it as in both two ways. I took it as, okay, well, it's just me here. I'm going to stick out like a sore thumb. But at the same time, it is just me here, so I have more than enough reason to kind of stand out and just show what I'm capable of. And I think that's one of the reasons why I even started this podcast myself, because I too feel like there's a lack of representation of people of color, lack of representation for women in this industry. So spaces like this and social media in general give us that chance to showcase what we're capable of, and just to show people that, you know, we're more than just what you think when it comes to certain types of recipes. We have culinary expertise, we have knowledge, we have creativity, you know, we have ways of bringing our culture and our roots to the forefront. So I think it's great what you're doing, and I love the fact that you were able to represent the community in just so many ways. I just wanted to commend you on that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And you also mentioned that you had two boys, and, you know, as a fellow parent, do you find it kind of challenging sometimes to cook when you have kids, especially boys, because we know how boys can be. They can be little terrors, but do you feel like it's a little bit more challenging having to raise children and trying to cook and, you know, create content and just doing the different things that you're doing?
Yeah, you know, it's funny because when I first started, I had the bakery, so I didn't have to worry about childcare sometimes. I would just let them come downstairs with me, and then they would sit in the back. That's how everybody knows how old they are. It was funny because I just ran into somebody the other day. They were like, "Oh, how are the boys?" I'm like, "Oh, they're 10 and 11 now." They were like, "Wait a minute, when did they get so big?" Because they were being babies in the shop. You know, it was definitely a challenge. Then I was married, so I would have my ex-husband would take the kids sometimes, but it was with my grandmother and then me having them because he would work during the day. So I was the one who had them primarily. And then I would say what happened was when I started really working out of the commissary kitchen after I closed my shop, that's when it got really difficult because I couldn't bring them. And that's really the reason why I wanted to business for myself, so that if I had challenges with the boys, I would be able to bring them, you know, with me. And it wasn't an option anymore because it was COVID time actually. So they were restricting how many people could actually come to the space. And then afterwards they had like their own regulations on who could come in the space and all this other stuff. I'm like, look, I don't have those regulations because my kids have to be here with me when they're off for school, when they're out of school, after school, you know what I mean? And you know how it is. Sometimes, yeah, you can have care after school, but I'm working till like 12 o'clock at night sometimes. And I'm not working in the daytime all the time. Sometimes I'm working from when I drop them off from school to when I pick them up to after I pick them up, you know, till they fall asleep, well after they fall asleep. So it's definitely been a challenge now that they're in different programs. So they're in basketball, they're trying to be in tennis. My son just asked me to do chess. That's been a little difficult to juggle because I'm trying to figure out who takes you to school. Well, I take them to school no matter what. Well, who picks you up and takes you to these programs so that you can get there? Because at the end of the day, they still are 10 and 11. I mean, I know we live in New York and they can get around, but I try to make it as a easy commute as possible for them if I do have to like take a bus real quick somewhere. But it is a challenge trying to figure out what events they could come to, what events they can't come to, if I could sneak them in, or maybe they could come to me for setup and then they could leave. You know, those type of things are always a challenge.
Yeah, it definitely is. And you, speaking of the pandemic, as most of us know, it did have a major impact on the restaurant industry. And for some people in the restaurant industry, they, you know, try to stick it through and, you know, keep the restaurants going. But I know a lot of chefs who worked in the restaurant industry who kind of saw what social media was doing for home cooks and chefs, and kind of, you know, took that ball and ran with it. And now they're creating their own platforms on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and other forms of social media. How has the pandemic impacted you, whether positively or negatively, and how has it been able to help you build your brand?
So right before the pandemic, I want to say 2018, fall 2018 was when I closed the doors. And then of Lady Lexis Sweets. So that's like right before the pandemic. So I'm thinking like 2019 because I'm trying to figure out like where I'm at. So I got a part-time job because I was figuring out what I was going to do. I just broke up with my ex-husband. We separated finally, and I was like, what am I going to do? How am I going to figure this out? So I got a part-time job, and I was actually still catering on the side. After I closed the shop, I was able to manage to get Hot Bread Kitchen as a space. So then that year, 2019, when we come back around, that first couple of months, I had just got momentum because I actually was on Chopped. And Chopped Sweets, and it aired, I want to say, 2 weeks before everything shut down. And we were in. I remember because we went to Harlem Tavern to actually view it with a bunch of my friends and family, and some people that follow me on Instagram and stuff. And they came out to do the viewing party with me, and everything was going good. I got a bunch of calls to do like celebrity dinings, celebrity events, all these other things. Was dope. Then that week came, and they were like, okay, they're gonna shut down the NBA. That's the first thing that happened. Like that was a trickle event. And then they started there. And then they started, was like, okay, we're going to shut down the streets. And then they were like, okay, we're going to shut down. You can't, nobody can get on the train or the bus unless you're first responder or have to go to work. And it just, then one by one, even though I had that like momentum from Chopped, it slowly dwindled down because everybody started canceling their things one by one. So it was just like, we're postponing it, or we're canceling it. I actually had a deal with Museum of Food and Drink, MoFad, to be to do, what was I supposed to do? I was only supposed to do the cookies for them. So this is the great moment that came out of it. I was only supposed to do cookies for them and provide these, what we call Bene seed cookies. If you're familiar with Geechee culture, it's actually sesame seeds, but it was originally a Bene seed, and then as it came from, if I'm not mistaken, from West Africa here, in America, it is the sesame seed, so it's a much smaller seed. So it's a part of the same family. So that's what the only ones was a gift to them. And then COVID kind of happened. Like, it started settling in. Everything shut down. I want to say that summer. Yeah, it had to have been that, before that, maybe that summer. They called us and was saying, oh, yeah, let me be spring, summer. They said, hey, you guys want to do COVID meals? I said, COVID meals. They're like, yeah, well, people don't have any food. And they really don't have anywhere to go get food, or they live in a home by themselves. They're not able to get food. We're trying to figure out how we can get food to people that are supposed to come to like soup kitchens. And we partnered with the Refectorial Harlem. Yeah, the Refectorial Harlem. And they created chef meals that will go out to people that will be delivered to them. So we would create 250 meals a week for them and like make them and package them. And that's kind of how it snowballed. They were like, hey, Lexis, do you want to do this? You feel safe to come back into the kitchen? I was like, yeah, I don't care. Because the kitchen is so big. You're spaced out. Put your mask on. We were just, pretty much resilient. And I was like, sure, I'll do it. And that's how I switched from sweet to savory. Because then I went to doing food. And people knew me for some of my food from getting food from my shop, because I would make lunch while I was there, because I was kind of stuck at the shop. I couldn't go anywhere. So they kind of had a taste of the food in some pop-ups I did, but not really knowing that I could cook. So now I started doing these COVID meals, 250 meals a week. And it literally brought me back to life. So it brought my whole business back to life. Then MoFad finally came back. And because of COVID, they weren't allowed to have dine-in sessions. So they asked me to do their lunch boxes. So then I did the shoe lunch boxes for them. And I did the cookies. So I would do hundreds of cookies for them a week. And then I would do hundreds of meals between the Harlem, the Refectorial Harlem, and then MoFad. So it literally jump-started my career back up in a different way and pivoted me to savory. So it was actually really lucrative for me during COVID.
Yeah, I think that's a great story, and I think that's something that I kind of often hear a lot when it comes to people in the food industry, that while COVID did unfortunately shut a lot of things down and kind of put our lives in a standstill, people were able to find ways to pivot in the culinary industry, whether it was shutting the restaurant down and doing social media content, or finding ways to deliver food to people who necessarily didn't have it, and growing from there. So I do think it had its ups and downs, and I definitely think it impacted the restaurant industry in so many ways. But it is great to hear that you were able to kind of bounce back and kind of build something out of that. Real quick, I wanted to talk about off food topic situation, and hopefully I don't ruffle your feathers with this one, but
I'm open book. I had a podcast before, so I'm pretty good.
And we talked about this the other day. What about that game with the Knicks, man?
Listen, okay, I am upset. Okay, that 97-97 took me out. We were all in Harlem Tavern again, and the entire bar is screaming at that 97 up. I was like, you can't make this up. All everybody kept saying was like, if Hart would have made that one free throw, we wouldn't be in this situation. But we not blaming him. They played a good game, and we back to it.
Unfortunately, we're back in Philly, I think. So I'm hoping like the refs call the game fairly, but 76ers have the home team advantage, so we just got to play good ball and defense, and hopefully we can, clinch the series. Because I've been a Knicks fan since, without aging myself too much, I've been a Knicks fan since the Pat Riley, Ewing, Oakley days. So I would kind of treat my loyalty to the Knicks as a toxic relationship. Like, at some point they can do better, but they don't. But you still stick by their side regardless.
Like my Mets.
Oh, I'm a Yankee fan, but at least we like the Knicks.
I'm very much a Mets fan.
But they've been doing better this year. Like, they have great coaching, they have great defense. Jalen Brunson has been carrying the team. I have high hopes for them. I do think that we can clinch this game, but if we go from having a 3-game advantage and losing this, I can't make any excuses for them. Like, I don't know what to do.
I wouldn't even know what to do. What's funny is when I was growing up, I was actually a Lakers fan. I was definitely a hardcore Lakers fan. And then in these later years that I don't watch, because now everything has changed so much with TV, you don't have cable as much anymore. And just recently was the time I literally just stopped having cable, I want to say this year. And so I don't see the games, or I can't catch it. You know what I mean? I can't catch it on TV, like to watch it real quick. So, but I enjoy watching it. So I'll go to the bar and watch it. So that's sort of the good part. It's coming around with other New Yorkers and feeling like we're in this together. So that's the best part, I think. And then all the Knicks fans finally getting, their win.
Let's hope so. Hope for the best for them.
For the Knicks.
Yeah, exactly. So, I wanted to also touch about your experience in New York. It's obviously a lot different from when I was growing up. I personally feel like I wasn't really too privy on the food culture in New York growing up. I didn't really become, I guess you could say, a foodie or a chef until I left. So my experience with New York was just basically chopped cheeses, bacon, egg, and cheeses, pizza slices. But just from observing from the outside and just from my last few visits back in the city, I see that the food culture has changed so much. Like, there's more diverse restaurants out in New York now. People are starting to embrace different cultures, from Latin American cuisine, West Indian, Asian recipes. From your perspective, how would you say that the food culture in New York has changed over the last, let's say, 10 years or so?
Oh, wow. I had this conversation with my class. So I teach food entrepreneurship courses at Kingsborough. And I was just telling them, I'm like, some of these things you guys have non-existent 10 years ago. Like, literally, even Harlem has changed significantly. Since I started, we all pretty much know each other, most of the owners in Harlem. So, it's like Boulevard Bistro, it's Melba's, it's Marcus Spot, Red Rooster, it's Veneteria, it's Roadhouse, The Row, all these different places, 67 Orange. And it's just great to see, like, even in Harlem, it's great to see how those things have grown and how things have changed. And I can just walk outside of my house and go to a bar. Like, I don't have to worry about going downtown anymore. When I was younger, when I was in college, most of the time we would go downtown. We were like, oh, you got to go downtown to get something to eat. You got to go downtown or go to the Upper West Side or Upper East Side to get something to eat. And we really didn't want to go to Upper East Side because Upper East Side was racist to me. To just be blunt, you can't even, it's nowhere sugarcoating it. You couldn't find places that you can go to that you would feel welcome. And I was just like, so we would go to the Upper West Side. It was a little more welcoming on the Upper West Side, I would honestly say. Because I remember when I was younger, my mom and I went to this French spot or something like that, and they went randomly doing opera night. It was cool. It's the first time I ever heard opera. And just things have just changed. Like, from there, like, how the access to different cuisines. Like, I could take my sons to get bubble tea. I could take them to get Tibetan food. I could take them to get, what else? I'm trying to think of weird. Oh, we go to Astoria all the time to get the Greek food now, and we get some Mediterranean foods. So those are really cool because now the internet has opened everything up to people. So, like, even the places that were there before, we're knowledgeable about it now because we've seen people review them or check them out, or it just make the world a little bit smaller. So I like that part, and it's been cool because now it seems like there's so much other restaurants. You can try a new one every day and never get bored. So that's really dope. And then you can go to Queens. Like they always say, you go to Queens and you could be in different parts of the world without a passport. So that's the great thing about New York. You go to different places and you can see different cultures and different foods. And it's like I said, more accessible now. So I'm definitely happy for that.
Can you tell us a little bit about your experience on Chopped? I know you mentioned before about how it opened up several doors for you, but what was it like actually being on the show, getting to meet some of the judges? I know there's certain things that you can't disclose, because of NDAs and all that stuff, but would you be able to tell at least what your experience was like on the show?
Yeah, the time is real. The mystery basket is real. If you know that time is real. When the time starts, you start cooking, and when the time is over, you stop cooking. That is not staged. It's not at all. We do not know what are in the boxes. The boxes are just a surprise. It's like you and I, you guys see it, we see it, and it's cool because it got you to think on your feet. It's things that you never maybe put in front of. Like I had camel fat in the first round. Camel fat is actually really weird, and it's gamey, and it has crunchy crystals in it. So it's like it has some type of maybe salt crystals or fat crystals. I'm not sure what it is, but it's weird. So I used it I used a quarter cup of it to my sugar cookie. I think I made a sugar cookie that first round. Mm-hmm. And it was cool because then you could see different things you can try out to fix it. The best part about it was the kitchen. If nothing else, it's like Toys R Us for chefs. It has every single sprinkle, every thickening agent, every leavening agent, whatever you can think of, every different type of flour. Oh, it's amazing. That part is beautiful. The judges were really cool. We didn't get to speak to them that much, but in between shots, they would laugh and joke with us a little bit. So that was really cool. And then I got to meet all the people that were on the show with me. So that was really dope. Janie is from the area. So Janie bakes. I forgot. She has two cookie shops in Manhattan. Yeah, in Manhattan. And then Andrew is the cookie king of Miami. So he has a bunch of different places in Miami. And then the last guy's name, I forgot his name, but we do stay in contact because we all stay in contact pretty much. We'll say hey every so often because actually Andrew's husband called me last year to be a part of the Fire Heritage Tour. He runs the Fire Heritage Tour that tours around the States. So that was pretty dope. So we got really good connections. And the last guy, he had a bakery in Brooklyn. I think he just closed. He had the bakery throughout Brooklyn. He had a 1-year-old, I think, when it first started. So it was really dope. And yeah, it's just cool to be there, to be under a little bit of pressure, work in a time frame that kind of makes you nervous. It keeps you on your toes, and it helps to elevate your flavors. I can't say it was a little stressful, but it was definitely a fun experience.
Well, that's good to hear, and I'm sure you probably hear this a lot, but I'm truly proud that you were able to get on Chopped. Like I said, I love seeing representation on the big screen, on the small screen. So anybody that I see that's even remotely getting in these spaces, I have to give them their flowers. So kudos to you and all you've accomplished and all you've done in the culinary space.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. And before we wrap up, are there any special projects or any events that you have coming up in New York that our viewers can support?
So right now I have a private dining experience that I'm promoting, and the link is in my bio. You guys can see it, or ladylexis.com, and LADYLEXIS, just so they know. Because I know everybody always puts Alexis or Lexi. It's Lady Lexis. So I do private dining experiences where I have from 2 to 12 people, and I cook for them right there and then. It's really cool. They get a piece of the menu, but some of the menu, beforehand, a couple of items are on the menu, but you don't get to know the rest of the items until you get there. and it is in a. We're decorating it as a old Harlem, I guess, what meets New Harlem. So like a Harlem Renaissance over again, and it will feature different chefs that have been inspirational in my life through my career, and other chefs that I look up to. So it will feature pictures of them on the wall and all these other great things that you can see that represent Harlem. It makes you feel like you're there. So like one of the dishes I just worked on, I just took a couple pictures of it too. I did a collard green salad with uh, I did black eyed peas with a hot sauce vinaigrette and tostones croutons.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did I'm trying to think what else. I think what else? Oh, a coconut crusted codfish with pineapple slaw. So just different things that mix the Boricua Geechee culture together. So it's the Puerto Rican and the Southern Charleston culture, mix it together and create these amazing dishes and these amazing menus. So that's what I'm doing now. And then I will also bring back my sip and decorate. A lot of people have been doing that. So I'm like, you know what? I'll bring back the sip and decorate. I used to do them in my shop, and now I have a new space. So there'll be some sip and decorates going on in East Harlem, so people can come out and try it out, have a good time.
Well, we look forward to seeing you grow and look forward to your journey and support anything and everything that you're doing in the food space. Chef Lexis, I do want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us on the podcast today. You're always welcome to come back as a guest. We would love to have you on. You're amazing to talk to. You're inspiring. I just love hearing just the great things that are going on in your career. And as always, I wish you the best of luck in anything that you do.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Anytime. And I want to thank you all for listening to this podcast. I'll be sure to make sure that her information, her social medias, her sites are placed in the description below. Thank you all for listening to this podcast. We'll be right back. But when we come back, I'll have my burger slider recipe ready for each and every one of you to listen to, because on this podcast, we're all about the audio experience when it comes to cooking. So stay tuned. We'll be right back with those burgers in a bit.